The following broadcast is brought to you by the iGolf Sports Network.
Golf Talk Live is sponsored by the iGolf Sports Network and Golf Tips Magazine. Here's Andrew to tell you more about our sponsors.
iGolf Sports is a live stream broadcast and media production company providing quality programming designed to attract the golfing enthusiast. And Golf Tips, the game's most in-depth instruction magazine, including reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top teaching professionals, all designed to help you improve from tee to green. Welcome to Golf Talk Live with your host, Ted Odorico. Join Ted each week as he speaks with some of the best in golf. This week's special guest will join us a bit later. But first up is another great discussion on Coach's Corner. So let's introduce tonight's Coach's Corner panel.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Season 13 of Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and we've got a great show for you tonight. We're going to be starting things off as we normally do with a great discussion on the Coach's Corner panel, and I'm going to be joined by my good friend, Pete Buchanan, is tonight's special guest panelist. And then tonight's featured guest is Blair Kline. He's the general manager of golf operations at Dunedin Golf Club in Florida. He'll be joining me on the show a little bit later on in the broadcast. But if you'd like to watch this week's show or any of the previously aired episodes, then visit the iGolf Sports YouTube channel, or you can go to Spotify.com. You can also listen to the audio version on Spreaker.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to the iGolf Sports channel and or on Spotify, so you'll get notified as new episodes drop weekly. Are you looking to step up your game? Then become a golftipsmag.com premium member with 3 membership levels available: silver, gold, or platinum, all designed to fit every budget. Joining will gain you access to our premium content, such as golf tips from our top 25 instructors and the latest golf news and equipment product reviews, plus top travel destinations just in time to book your next buddy trip. And you'll also receive special discounts from our many premium partners like Cardio Golf, ShotScope, True Linkswear, Encore Golf, Sky Caddy, the Indoor Golf Shop, and Golf Bricks, just to name a few. So don't wait. Register today at golftipsmag.com and become a premium member. All right. As I mentioned, we're going to be starting things off here with Coach's Corner. So let me introduce my very special guest this evening on the panel. It's Pete Buchanan. He's been teaching golf for over 30 years. He's also the founder and director of instruction of Plain Simple Golf, which houses the Plain Simple Golf Circuit and the Simple Swing Repeater Training Brace. And he's been helping golfers around the globe focus on building a repeatable swing. And he's among the favorites here on the Coach's Corner panel. So, Pete, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Ted. It's great to be here. Always nice to be on the show.
All right. As I say, welcome back. Actually, I should have said not welcome. I just said welcome back. As most of you know, if you follow the program, of course, Pete and many of the others come back usually once a month. And occasionally, if they have to jump in to fill in for somebody else, they might actually make it on here twice a month. But always glad that you're able to do that. So I got a really interesting, and I want to just give a very short backstory on this. There's a really good topic for tonight's show, and I thought this would be great for you and I. I actually just posted an article earlier this afternoon on golftipsmag.com under our instructional, and it's called what is the 80-20 rule in golf? And I'm going to explain a little bit that. So in golf, the 80-20 rule, also known as the Pareto principle, suggests that roughly 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions or efforts. So this principle can be applied to various aspects of the game, from swing mechanics to your practice routines and even course strategy. So to better understand, here's, again, just a general description of Pareto's principle. The 80-20 rule, also known as the Pareto principle, states that roughly 80% of effects come from 20% of causes. So in simpler terms, a small portion of inputs or efforts often leads to the majority of results or outcomes. So this principle, of course, is just a general guide. It's not strict mathematical law and can vary. So it could also be 90-10. It could be 70-30 as well. But he worked on the 80-20 rule, and it's can really be applied in many areas of life. So you're probably asking, okay, well, what is this? How does this apply to me? How does this apply in golf? So we're going to talk about this first, and it's very interesting. We're going to cover swing mechanics first, Pete. And I'm just going to give you sort of a little bit of an intro, and then I'll get your thoughts on this. So as an example, in swing mechanics, focus on the vital few elements of the swing that produce the most sufficient significant results rather than trying to master every detail. So what I mean by that is, there's certain fundamentals that we want to incorporate in our golf swing, but more often than not, most people spend the majority of their time working on a vast number of things to the point where it actually is more detrimental and trying to master every detail. So, you might want to touch on things like the grip and things like that. I mean, obviously, if you work and become more proficient on the grip, since that's what's holding the golf club, then that's going to help a lot of other areas of your golf swing be a little bit more on track. So, taking it from that perspective, and I hopefully I explained everything well enough in this, but do you agree with that? Do you understand what I'm trying to get across here? Is that, and that doesn't mean that we just do 20% effort. I don't mean it that way, but what it means is and we'll get into it as we unpack more of it. You'll understand even more for the audience perspective. But a lot of times there's a smaller percentage of things that we can work on overall and not necessarily perfect, but become more proficient in, that's going to help our golf game and increase the likelihood, or the 80%, that we're going to be successful out in the golf course. And unfortunately, a lot of people do the opposite and spend so much time on trivial things like trying to hit the perfect drive out there every time, or trying to work on something other part of the string, and they forget about other key elements that could improve their scoring. So give me your thoughts here to open up the conversation, and then I'll get into some other areas as well under swing mechanics.
Well, I think it's a great topic. I had a great discussion the other day with one of my tour guys talking about, why he's beginning to teach now. And he's like, why do you feel, or what do you feel is the biggest, hurdle that most amateur players are up against? And I said, well, arm structure with the shaft angle is probably the number one thing that they do not do well. And I said, you can spend a lot of time just on that and not worried about all those other details. Get the arm structure right, get the club in the hands right, and just get the club to swing in a better structure with how they're moving their arms back and forth. And you'll see the impact change right away. And they'll be able to control the ball better. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do to, work on simple things, not too many things overall. And like you're saying, the 80-20 is really, really good. I had a gentleman the other night, just didn't move the body well enough. And I have a great app that I'm going to plug it if it's okay. But using XView, we have a center mass that we use. And on the center mass, we can measure where the center mass is moving. And then I can put it on live. And so he can actually see his center mass moving while he's taking practice swings. And so we showed him where he was off. So all we did was basically move the lower half and the chest upper half. We moved those center portions in just a little bit different fashion for about 20 minutes. Didn't even talk about the arm structure, didn't talk about the club, the shaft, any of those things. And then I said, all right, hit some. And it was a miles different right away. So there's one little small specific thing that we can move on.
Right.
And get that better and better and better, and not trying to do 8 things at once. All we did was 1. Yeah. So I think this is a great topic that, especially with swing mechanics, because people can get so lost in what's going on and trying to make everything, move the right way. There's really 2 parts to every swing: how the body moves and how the hands and arms move. And if the hands and arms aren't correct, it doesn't really matter how your body moves. You're going to have a hard time getting the club back on the ball. So you've got to get the hands and arms proper. If they move proper, all of a sudden the body starts moving a little bit along with them. And then you can start to enhance that more by getting the body to move more efficiently. But I think for me, I spend a lot of time working on specifics. Usually the one area, you've heard me say this before. To me, the golf swing's like having a cold. There's a virus that creates symptoms. Every golf swing has a virus in it. Yep. And so if you don't get to the virus, well, the rest is a moot point. So we spend a little bit of time correcting the actual cause of everything, and then, piece it together without trying to do too many things at once, and really fix the big things, and all the little things will take care of themselves.
Yeah. A lot of times simple changes can have big impacts. And that's really what the 80-20 rule is talking about. So, for instance, once you recognize that a large portion of the swing is a reaction to initial action, like I said, if it's a poor grip, it's going to react. The whole swing is going to be out of sync or what have you. And a lot of golfers sort of over control the swing rather than allowing natural reactions to initiate movement. So again, you want to sort of focus on things like, and this is why so many pros focus on pre-shot routine, which of course helps your body remember sort of its natural swing. My father, I can remember growing up, he would always say to me, he said, Ted, some of your best golf swings were your practice swings. And he said, but as soon as you stepped over that ball, all of a sudden it was like, I don't know who was standing there, but it was not the same guy there, 2 seconds ago. So again, we also have to remember that gravity plays a little bit of role as well, and the weight of the club helps. So maybe you could touch on that. The old saying, "What goes up comes down." So gravity plays a big role, believe it or not. A lot of people try to muscle, the golf club and muscle the golf swing, thinking that's going to generate more power. But a lot of times, just using the natural weight, feeling the weight of the golf club through the golf swing is all you really need to do. And again, there's certain key factors have to be in place, of course. But this is really the principle of the 80-20 rule. So again, maybe you could touch on a little bit of that from mechanics, again, from the golf swing, and talking about, really understanding some of the, larger portions of the swing and how the initial actions can affect them.
Oh, without question. I mean, you look at so many players, they're trying to, use the arm speed to try to hit it as far as they can. Distance is mass times velocity squared. And most amateur golfers don't use the mass at all. They don't use it properly. And so without using the body function, they can swing as hard as they want. It's not going to go anywhere as far as what they really need. But as soon as you get the structure right and get the hands and arms moving, there's side to side and up and down. I mean, that's really, if you want to simplify the golf swing, that's what we have. Up and down is the arm function there and the shaft function, but we can't have them too up and down. Obviously, there's a limit to that. But if you can get the arm structure in a pretty good spot and then utilize, as you talked about, the ground force, utilize the body to move properly, well, now you're creating a whole different energy level that's coming up from the ground into the golf club. And now a lot of times, and you've seen it before, Ted, we've all seen it, you take a guy that's swinging 90 miles an hour and you move him down to 80 and he hits it 20 yards further.
Yeah.
Because now we've switched him to a position where he can feel what he's doing. He can move better at 80 miles an hour. We can put the body in, get the function right of how everything sequences together. And now he's got more leverage and more power with what feels like a slower golf swing, which it really is. But it's not always about trying to take the club, and try to force it and make it go. You got to let the club fall into place and utilize the body with it. And now you can create so much more leverage. And like you said, let gravity help you. Let it bring the club down. From the top of the swing, if you move the body right, the club will fall into position and it'll repeat its path time and time and time again if you put the sequence of movements together. So you can actually take the golf swing and very simply put it in a decent spot, even if it's, a lot of players today would be better off taking the backswing 3/4 length versus full. And I've always said, really, the new full is 3/4. So you should take it 3/4 back because you're going to be in a more leveraged position from there. And then as you move the body, the club will naturally fall into place. So it'll fall right into the right path. And so you can now repeat better ball flight shots because now you're utilizing, easier solutions to moving the body, letting the club fall into place. And now it's just going to be more efficient overall.
Yeah, well said. And, again, really what I'm, the reason I wrote the article, I also wanted to touch on this, and it's a very straightforward article. It doesn't get into a lot of the weeds, and obviously there's room for adaptation, if you will, and we'll get into some of that a little bit here. But there's really 4 components. We talked about swing mechanics. We're not going to get into a lot of that because really that's something that you need to work with your pro with and get into some of the specifics. But this is just really this article was meant to be really a guide. So we're going to get into practice routine. So prioritizing the practice areas of your game that are going to yield the most significant improvements to your score. So we've talked about this before. Yeah, it's nice to bomb a long drive out there, but that represents a very small portion of the game. And really over 50% of your game is with the short clubs, well over 50%. So if you're not very proficient, right? And so again, I think it's a matter of trying to teach people to prioritize those areas, that 20% of the game that people don't touch on, and bring that so that you're going to yield 80% results, positive results, of course. So maybe you could touch about the short game a little bit. And again, we'll get into some other things as well, but maybe you could just sort of unpack that a little bit more.
Well, sure. I mean, no one who's ever scored well did so without putting well. I mean, you always have to putt well if you're going to score well. And I always used to tell the players, one place that you're not going to be bothered very much is on the putting green because there's hardly anybody on there. So get over there and get some practice on that. The better you can roll putts, the more confidence you have in what your putting style is and rolling the ball in the right direction, the more putts you're going to make, the lower you're going to score. And you have to always let the other shots, chipping and pitching, those should provide you an opportunity to putt. So you want to make sure that you can get proficient at your chip shots so you can get it close enough that you're confident enough to make those putts. Pitching, yeah, you're going to have a little bit more distance, but still you want to be able to give yourself a decent opportunity to make that putt from those shots. But when you really look at how you're playing the game, I mean, really, if you played the game relative to the scorecard, I mean, half your game would be putting because you two-putt every green. But we're going to take into consideration you're going to miss some greens. So now instead of being 50% of your score in the short game, is going up because you're going to miss some greens. You're going to have to get up and down. And then, if that short game is a way higher percentage of your score, that means we're wasting too many shots around the green. So we want to keep that to a minimum as we can and let those short shots really, dictate what's going on. 80-20, it's always good in there because, you get proficient at the short shots, especially chipping. And I say chipping because, I think you can take the chipping technique to about 20 yards off the green and still hit very proficient shots. I mean, you don't have to make giant swings to make, a lot of great short game shots. Just watch it on TV. They don't take, close to the green. They're not taking big swings unless they're in the rough or something. That's different. But, they're so proficient at moving the club from waist high to waist high. And if you can perfect just that motion alone, it opens up a whole world of shots around the green that you can use depending on the loft that you take. And now you're going to be so much more efficient at putting shots on the green and making putts that your scores are going to go down, like crazy. And I've seen it time and time again where you have somebody who hits a decent round hitting the ball from tee to green, but oh, good grief, it just falls apart around the greens and the score just goes up like crazy. So, and then, of course, then they come back and say, if I could just drive it further, I could score better. I said, nah, that's not the issue.
And here's something, let me just interject real quick here, and I apologize for interrupting you, but, we interview a lot of the Epson Tour players on the other program I do on Tuesday mornings with Cindy Miller on the Women of Golf show. And what's interesting is very few of them will come out and say, well, I'm a terrible ball striker or I can't drive the ball very well. Probably 90% of them say I need to, become a better putter. That's not to say they're not a good putter, but that's the area. Sometimes it might be chipping and that, but usually every other part of their game is pretty solid. But putting is usually what lets them down. And it's interesting because that's what they're focusing on. And it brings me to this other point is, instead of focusing on everything, focus on the 20% of your game that gives you the biggest return in terms of scoring. And so it could be, as you just were pointing out a second ago, you might be a really good chipper and maybe you are a good putter. So, okay, you don't have to spend as much time. So maybe you want to work on other areas of the game. Maybe you need to be a better driver. So you need to focus a little bit more on the long game. So you have to find out what areas are going to yield the biggest result. So if you're already a pretty good short game person, then obviously you need to get yourself in a position to capitalize on that. If you're not a very good short game person, then you need to do the opposite. You need to start looking at, working on the putting, working on the chipping and pitch shots, things like that. And that doesn't mean that, we're not saying to neglect the areas that you're good at, saying don't ever hit a drive on the range, but you have to allocate more time to the areas that need improvement. And that's Absolutely. What people don't do, right? I mean, you've seen this, people raking and hitting balls on the range.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And the other point of that is, your short game work is continual. It's not that you just go hit chip shots one day and then you're done because I practice it. You have to keep doing those because you got to have conditions and feel and, weather and green conditions. You have to keep doing those shots time and time and time again. It should be an integral part of your overall practice. The short game should always be a piece of practice. When you go to hit balls, you should spend a part of that practice doing some kind of short game shots because you're going to need those all the time. And yeah, and you have to be able to practice efficiently, and really taking into account. That's why I like today. You've mentioned before in other shows, they've got stats now. I mean, you can track your whole round, and now you can really pinpoint exactly where you're having the most troubles. I had a gentleman the other day. He said, I'm having my most trouble from 90 to 150 yards.
Mm-hmm.
a great stat to have. I said, well, that's
Oh yeah.
great to know. Yeah. So let's figure this out. Why are we, what clubs are we using? What's the process you're trying to do from 90 to 100 to 110 to 120? Let's figure out, a way that we can attack that. And, now you're going to be way more efficient. So, those stats were detrimental for him to figure out that there's actually a distance from the green that he's not very good at.
Well, and don't sell short the benefit that, instructors or, coaches like ourselves having that information as well, because, if we don't know the player's statistics, if we don't know where they're good or more proficient or not, lacking in, then we're spending a lot of times potentially on areas of the game that maybe they really don't need. I mean, certainly a trained professional is going to be able to look at it and say, okay, this guy's a good ball striker, so we don't need to focus on that. We need to focus on here. And it's not that it can't be uncovered, but if we're seeing patterns, like let's say 1 week he's, chipping the ball really well, so we're thinking, okay, we don't need to work on that. But the next round he's gone out and it's just fallen, to hell in a handbasket. Then we have to take a look at it. Okay, why is he, he's making some good chips, but he's not consistent. So we need to improve his consistency. Maybe he's driving the ball really good for a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden, the wheels fall off the bus. So, putters always get a little streaky. It doesn't matter what level of player you are. So
Sure.
Again, using this sort of 80-20 rule will help you be more focused on what you need to work with. So certainly with the stats, and this comes into things like course strategy. So, concentrate, as I said, on the aspects of the game that are going to create the biggest impact on your score. So for an example, and I'm going to let you unpack this in a second, but if you've got a few well-placed drives and maybe some solid approaches and and an efficient short game, that's going to significantly lower your score. So, as you point out, you want to get your ball closer to the hole and so forth. So again, using this 80-20 rule can also be used to guide club selection, that sort of thing. So again, strategy is important. Maybe you could touch on that. I've given you sort of a few things you can draw from that you can use if you want your explanation, but this is an area as well. Course strategy. I mean, again, knowing your strengths and weaknesses when you're out there is critical.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, there's a lot of times you can probably get somebody, obviously depending on the level, but for most players, you can probably get them 5 to 8, maybe 10 shots better just by giving them the right club at the right time. So many times they'll be in a situation where they'll try to play a shot that really doesn't fit, first of all, their ability level, but it just doesn't fit the situation that they're in. So being able to go out and, look at each hole, design each hole. I try to break this down for all of my players when I say, well, where are you playing next week? So, well, I got a tournament at such and such. I'll pull it up on Google and I'll pull all the holes up and I'll go through every hole and I'll say, look, here's our strategy. Here's where you got to hit it off the tee. Well, why, what do you mean hit hybrid off that one? I said, well, if you drive it 60 yards from the green, you're not very good at those. So why are you going to put yourself 60 yards from the green? Yep. Let's hit a hybrid off the tee. So you're 110 out. And now you're good at wedges from 110 yards. So let's put you where your strengths are. So yeah, that's definitely something that a lot of players, they have to understand, first of all, where their weaknesses are, and their strengths. I mean, and it's hard sometimes too, because, you get done with a round and most people will tell you where they, well, I missed a, putt on 7, I 3-putted 6, I hit that one shot over the green on 4, but they don't remember they made, 7, 10 footers.
Right.
Where's the good stuff? So remember the good stuff, because that's a big piece of it. And those are the parts that are going to help you along. But, you also have to, understand in some of those situations, if you had a shot into the green that you didn't perform well, what was the distance? Is that something that you're pretty good at? And if you're not, could you have avoided that yardage? And people say, well, shouldn't I get better hitting that shot? I said, yeah, over time, you're going to get better hitting that shot. But in the heat of the moment, if you're not good from 70 yards, then don't put it 70 yards from the green. Either put it 20 yards or 115 or 20 or wherever your strength is, hitting irons into the green. So, yeah, course strategy is huge in trying to get players to understand how to score better. And I know you've come across this and I've come across this. You go out with somebody on the course on a playing lesson, and it just blows them away when we talk about, oh, here's how I play this hole. They're going, really? You play it this way? Yeah, it's the most efficient way to play the hole. Well, you're not just going to bomb a driver down there? No, It doesn't do me any good. It doesn't fit this hole. But, there's a lot of times, too, the home course I grew up on, I only hit driver on 4 holes.
Yeah.
Because that was the only 4 we needed. The other
Yeah.
ones, the driving areas were so tight. And if you missed the driver, goodness gracious, that second shot was brutal. You hit in that Kentucky bluegrass rough, it's like hitting out a barbed wire. So, you had to really place the golf ball around the golf course. And so, yeah, I mean, I had a driver. I was pretty good at driving the ball. I mean, I had a high percentage of fairways hit, but, there's holes that, if you miss hit it, boy, you're in deep trouble. So to score better, you had to take the course apart and really utilize different clubs on different tees to be more efficient in your scoring.
What always baffles me, just to pick up on that, what always baffled me a lot with players is that they'll play, their favorite course, week in, week out, maybe they're a member, and they don't really analyze the course. They just go out there, remember that, I scored pretty good in this hole and that's it. They don't really, do a deep dive. Or there's somebody that maybe plays multiple courses and they've never played a course before and they don't do any research like you did with, like you said, going on Google and researching the course, seeing how it's laid out and see how can I best, set that up. And, I want to bring something else because you were talking about, setting things up properly, with whether hitting a driver or what have you. And, Clint Wright, of course, who, has been on the show many times and as you have, and you've been on with him a number of times. And he always talks about, sort of working back from the hole. So he says, okay, what's my favorite yardage when I'm approaching the green? So if it's a 100-yard shot or a 110-yard shot, then I want to work my way back and say, okay, what club do I need to get me to that 110? So is it going to be one shot? Can I get within that range? Or do I need to take two shots? See if it's on a par 5. Instead of hitting a good drive and then trying to line it on the green and hope for the best, especially when you got a lot of trouble, he says, I would rather lay up to that perfect yardage for me. So I do the math backwards. So it might be 2 shots to get me there. It might be only 1, but I want to know what yardage I'm going to come in. As you said, if you're coming in at 70 yards as opposed to 110, well, the 110 is my favorite distance with my wedge, not 70. That's a shot I'm not very proficient in. So why would I want to hit a ball and run the risk that I'm going to put it in that 70, 80-yard range when I can lay up a little bit and get it in that 110 and know I'm going to come off with a good shot? So again, course strategy is very, very important. And this is, again, where this 80-20 guide, or this 80-20 rule, if you will, can really guide your club selection and help you sort of map out what you need to do. And this brings into our final point, and that is identifying weaknesses. And I know we've talked a little bit about this, but it's so important to analyze your game, to pinpoint those areas that are holding you back. What part of the game, and instead of spending, too much time on areas that you're already, again, very proficient in, and rather than focus on areas that, weak areas that could be done. So when you're doing that, again, you want to create a plan, if you will, not just for yourself, but through your coach as well, is together you want to identify those weaknesses. So things like stats and those types of things. Have a conversation, as you always said many times on the show. Let's have a conversation. Where's the areas that you're finding most difficulty with? And then let's drill down on those for a little bit. Let's work on those and get them up to, even if they're not quite as much to the same level as what your stronger points are, let's get them up a lot more. If you're 80% here on this area, what drives and whatnot, and you're only 30% down here with your putting and your chipping, well, we got quite a gap, right?
Correct. Yeah,
So,
no question.
So when you're working with somebody, let's talk about this again. When you're working with somebody, the first thing you want to do is you want to identify where those areas that they're struggling with the most. That's obviously you want to, first time golfer, you want to do an assessment. You want to see overall what their game looks like, if they're swinging the club properly, and identify. But once you've done that, really what you're looking for is what weak areas of their game, and then how can we best provide a solution to help them become a more, not just a better ball striker, but a better player overall. So maybe just walk us through a little bit what you would work with a student, how you would approach it.
Well, I mean, you made a good point there, because a lot of times when they start to describe to us, the good and the not so good parts of their game, you can already, for me, I've been around enough swings to know if I start hearing certain things they're struggling with, I know what their golf swing looks like, because it's a definite, I would say pattern that goes in there. And that was one of the great things about working at golf schools for so many years, is there's all patterns. Everything's patterns. You see it all over the place. If a guy swings it here, the downswing goes there. I mean, it just happens. And good players have different patterns, and they're better at different things than not so good players. but yeah, you have to be able to identify where you need the most help. And a lot of times when I'm such a big, for me, most people come to me because they know from a full swing standpoint. I mean, that's really what I'm known for. Even though I coach the number one putter in the world, I'm still known for the full swing guy. But there's so many times where I'll watch them hit balls and they're striking it really well, and I'll just pull out a wedge and say, here, I want you to hit it to that flag where there's 43 yards. Hit me a few balls over there. Well,
Yep.
aren't we working on my full swing? I said, well, we already did that. Come on, I want to see how you do from 40 yards because I know you're not very good at it. How do you know that? No, trust me, I know. So then,
Right.
we'll give them something else to do. And you have that too a lot of times. So how good is your pitching? Oh, I'm really good. Yeah, well, good is relative.
Yeah, let's see.
Good,
Let's
good
test it out.
relative to what? Oh, you're good when you have to hit a 90-yard full shot. But if I'm putting you at 30 yards, how good are you?
Yeah.
So really, and I think times with most people is you have to be a little bit more honest with yourself too when you're describing what your game is, because what areas you're not very good at, and ego I think comes in a little bit to play because I think I'm pretty good at those shots, but you shoot 95, so you're not really proficient enough at those good shots because you're trying to get under 80, and there's no way with those areas you're going to get under 80 because this is killing your scoring. And so we have to dig down into, what really are the weaknesses. And if you and I've been around this game long enough to know that we can answer, we'll ask them a question and then we'll give them another question when they give us an answer, and we can keep questioning them until we pull it out of them. And so we finally figure out what their weaknesses are. And then we have to come up with a plan to fix them, because, it's not always about, doing ABC. And I do a lot of things when I have them leave, and I give them drills to do. And I said, look, your next practice session is only this drill. What do you mean?
Yep.
Yeah, you're going to spend an hour doing only this, because it's going to be miles, gain for you for where we're trying to go down the road. You have to be proficient at this motion. So this is what you're going to do next. And then once you get that, we're going to go here. So I think you're right in, getting everybody to really understand, all of their game, what they're really good at, what they're not so good at, and what those weaknesses are. And then you've got to have a plan to attack them, because, you've got to get those weaknesses better if you're going to score better. And, there's no other way to do it. You have to get those bad shots out of there. I know for me, I mean, you made a great point. When I played professionally, my best irons were 6, 7, and 8. So I drove it off the tee, so I had a 6, 7, or 8 in. And there'd be guys with drivers, and I'm hitting 4 iron. They go, what are you doing? I said, because I'm hitting 7 iron into the screen, because I can play from there. So I always drove it, so I had one of those irons in there. I was really good with those, and I knew I was good with those. So I'd drive it off the tee so I could hit one of those in there. And I scored the best when I could do that.
Yeah, you have to play to your strengths, and you have to know what those strengths are first and foremost. But then you also have to be honest about, one of the things I always say to people when I would have them in and have that initial conversation is the first thing I would say to my mouth, or come out of my mouth, is no matter what you tell me, just be honest. Because when we get out to that lesson tee, when we get out in that range, I'm going to see what's really going on. So, you can try to sugarcoat it, or you can try to dress it up, put lipstick on the pig, as they say. But the truth of the matter is, when you start hitting those golf balls, or we go out for a playing lesson, I'm going to very quickly be able to identify where the areas that you're struggling with. So, just be honest. Just say, my putting really sucks, or, my chipping's really bad, or it's sketchy, or whatever the case. Just be honest with it, because I can't fix what we can't identify. And if you're just going to come to me and you're going to sort of, well, I just want to hit the ball further, and you're hiding 2/3 of your game, thinking that if I hit it just 20 yards more, then I don't have to play. That's the other thing. That's the other thing that, it's really interesting is, and again, I understand people having their favorite clubs to work with, but at the same time, I think people took it a little bit literally. So they'll start saying, well, I can't hit this club, I can't hit that club. Well, why is it in your bag? Take it out. If you're that bad, let's put a set together that is going to combine with clubs that you are pretty good hitting and maybe need some improvement. But if you're hitting poorly with long irons, what are you doing with a 3, 4, even a 5 iron? Pull them out of the bag, replace them with a hybrid. Let's be honest about it. And again, I think it's for men, particularly. For women, it's a little bit different, but for men, I think it's an ego thing. I think it's that they just don't want to admit that, hey, I can't stripe these shots. And, so this is where, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this is I wanted to, I like to read certain things, and I came across the Pareto's principle some years back, the 80-20, and I got thinking about it. And I was thinking about it the other day, and a few weeks ago actually, and I said to myself, I think if I could put this together and apply it to golf, I think it would be really useful for a lot of people. And again, it's very bullet point. There's not a lot of meat on it, because I really want them to think about it and then sort of be honest with themselves and say, okay, what 20% of my game can I work on that's going to yield me, if I improve on that, that's going to yield me 80, that's going to affect 80% of my game. Well, the short game is an easy one. So really, that's what you want to do, is you want to be able to see those results, and you want to see steady improvements. But if you're focusing on areas of your game that you're already pretty proficient in, and you're neglecting other areas of your game, then you're going to get into a situation where you're never going to get to become a better player, because you're just working on the same thing. So the 80-20 when it comes to golf is really 4 key areas that I covered here: was swing mechanics, practice routine, course strategy, and of course, identifying your weaknesses. And again, when you put them all together and you start applying them to your game, and with that 80-20 rule in mind, again, you'll start to see your overall game will improve, and you're going to have more fun. You're going to get out there. So that's why I put it up on golftipsmag.com. So I'm going to give you the last minute or two to touch on anything, if we've missed anything, or anything that you want to add to it. But I think it's a very simple principle, but I think it involves a lot of honesty by the golfer.
One of the things that I think you'll find really interesting, I coach one of the world long drive players. And he said, what's really hard for me is when I play golf is, I hit a wedge 155, 160 yards. So I've got a giant gap going down to the other shots. And I said, well, then why are you driving it so you only have 60 yards? I said, you hit 7-iron 250 yards. Why don't you hit 7-iron off the tee? And then hit an 8 or 9 or 7-iron into the green. You're always thinking, I'm going to bomb it, and then you're leaving yourself with shots you can't play. So even at those guys' lengths, they still have to back off of the tee, even though they can drive it a mile. If they want to play golf, it becomes a different strategy, totally different strategy. So, no, I think this overall is, something that would help all players, because they have to identify, the problem areas. And, we come across that all the time, and we talk to them all the time about what, where are you struggling? Tell me, you shot 93 today. You normally shoot in the low 80s. Why was it? Tell me what shots gave you the most trouble. And they hardly ever say, well, I hit 6 tee balls out of bounds. They usually come back and say, well, probably 100, 110 yards, and then probably some chips and pitches around the green. That's probably where I was struggling. So, and then we can identify them. And now we've got that. So now, all right, let's go work on it. Let's make those shots a little bit better. And I think that's really where, if you're going to improve your scoring, first of all, you have to improve, as you said, that 20%. You got to improve it. You got to make it better. There's just no other way around it. And, everybody knows where their weaknesses are. When I played, pitching was my weakness, so I just avoided it. I wasn't very good at 60 yards. So on a par 5, I made sure I was never 60 yards away, because that was a struggle. So I would leave it somewhere else. But, and it's not that I didn't practice those. I just wasn't comfortable with those when I was playing. So I just avoided it. And so that's what you can do too. If you've got some areas and some shots that you're not comfortable with, you can strategize to avoid them. And that's really that's how you play golf. That's part of, really scoring. That's a big piece of you understanding your own game and being able to take what you have and get on the course and lower your score.
Yeah. And that's, Nicholas talked about that. He focused on certain parts of his game. He had the same swing. He just used a different club, and he worked on the fundamentals. He said for him at the beginning of the season, it was the fundamentals that he needed to bring up to snuff. And, he didn't go out, and he wasn't like some players went out and hit thousands upon thousands of golf balls. He knew what he could bring to the game. He was more concerned about making sure his grip was correct, making sure he had the right ball position each time, and making sure he made a good solid turn, in the backswing, and a good, follow through and that sort of thing. So he worked on very basic things, but you didn't see him tinkering around. And anytime when he did try to make a change, like I remember reading, and I think we talked about it years ago on the show, when, he was, of course, working for years with Jack Grout, but then, and I forget who the gentleman was, but there was somebody came along and tried to get him to hit a draw. And he said he did that for a season. And he said his game just went, hell in a handbasket. Yeah. I'm not quoting him, but paraphrasing. So he went back to hitting his fade. and it worked
Right.
for him, and he won, all these majors and all these tournaments around the world, and was, arguably the best player in the world. And
Right.
and Tiger really follows that same suit. He did the same thing. He looked at what worked for him. He focused on things. Now, obviously, those guys, their whole game is pretty solid. But Tiger was never a great ball striker or driver at times. I mean, he was sometimes would spray it all over the place. But man, you get him with those iron shots, and he would famously do that stinger shot with a 2-iron, off the tee. And people are thinking, why are you hitting a 2-iron? But man, he belt that thing probably 260, 270 down the middle of the fairway because he wanted to get himself in position for his next shot. And,
Correct.
so there's a method to the madness. But I think the 80-20 rule is something that any golfer can apply. And it's up on golftipsmag.com. So if you want to check that out, I just posted up today. So if you go to golftipsmag.com, you can check that, the 80-20 rule in golf, and it's up there right now. And while you're there, register and become a premium member and get some great discounts from many of the suppliers, premium members, partners that I mentioned earlier in tonight's show. But Pete, as always, I want to thank you for coming on. It's always a pleasure, and hopefully you'll take something away from this as well, and
Awesome.
and apply it to your teaching and so forth. But you mentioned you've got some things going on. So first off, let the folks know if they want to reach out to you, best way they can do it. And if you have anything you want to plug, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Again, Ted, thanks for having me on. It's always a great time being on the show, and we appreciate what you do for all of us. They can reach me at petebuchanangolf.com. Everything is out there, all my contact information. Right now, I'm working heavily with XView AI, the new 3D software. If you really want to figure out what that's all about, send me a video and let me put you in there. The free version app, I think, is out now that you can go get it at your store. But if you really want to have a good in-depth look at it, send me a video. I can put you in there. I can do a recap for you and kind of give you an idea what it's all about. But it's really behind the scenes. For 2 years, I've been working with the software, measuring things out and looking at different swings and patterns. So I have all the info in the background. So now when I get a video from somebody, or I'm in front of somebody working, I've already done the research behind it, so I can get there much faster. And that's what really AI is helping us do in the 3D. We can just see so much more, so much easier. So it's a great way to do it. So, and again, like I've always said, just let's start a conversation. You'd be amazed at how much we can come across and how much we can get done if we just start a conversation, and then, let's take your game to where you want it to go.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right. Well, once again, I want to thank Pete for coming on and having a great Coach's Corner discussion. I hope he enjoyed it just as much as I did, and hopefully you will enjoy it as well. And again, go to golftipsmag.com, and the article's there. You can get a little bit more in depth than what we talked about here through the article. But on that note, I'm going to be joined by my featured guest. So I'm going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, I'll be joined by Blair Kline from the Dunedin Golf Club in Florida. We'll be right back.
Improve your putting with the Alignment Ball Marker, a revolutionary new in-game putting alignment tool and ball marker. Its patented design allows you to reach your putt and adjust your alignment at the same time by using your putter, which improves your accuracy and makes the process of putting faster. 100% legal according to the USGA, by their definition, permitted under the rules of golf. Winner of Best New Product at the PGA Show and only $9.99 on Amazon. And it's also completely customizable for any golf event or as a promotional giveaway. Order at alignmentballmark.com.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm super excited tonight to be joined by this evening's featured guest. His name is Blair Kline. He is the general manager of golf operations at Dunedin Golf Club in Florida. Tell you a little bit about his background, and then we'll get into tonight's discussion. Blair has been working in golf since 1966. He became a PGA professional in 77, and then later became a PGA member in 1983. He's also played on the mini tours for over 10 seasons throughout several states: California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, even up into British Columbia, and many others, several others actually. And he's held general manager and head golf professional positions at a number of clubs in Florida, as well as Texas, Arizona, and again, California. And in 2024, he came to Dunedin Golf Club to oversee the $6 million restoration and run the golf operations for the city of Dunedin. So, Blair, welcome to Golf Talk Live, and thank you for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me. It's going to be very enjoyable.
Well, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll do my best to keep up. But I always like to. I mean, obviously, in your bio, it gave a little bit of information about obviously your background and things like that. But I want to go a little further back, if you don't mind, and to some of your earliest memories. And then we'll get into, obviously, we'll talk about Dunedin. But I want to. When did you first sort of become interested in golf? How did that come about? Was it a parent that introduced you, or was it just a natural curiosity? And sort of how did you get started? And then at what point did you decide, okay, I want to be a part of this business?
Actually, it was a mother and father that decreed I needed a summer job. So I needed to go caddy for a summer for the summer job. And I was fortunate enough to become a caddy at the Broadmoor Golf Club in Seattle, Washington, one of the top clubs in the Northwest. And the golf professional at that time was a gentleman named Ben Doyle, who probably found his greatest fame as the leading proponent of the golfing machine book. It was written during the time I was at Broadmoor. I was very fortunate to hang out with a lot of other good players while I was there. But it really took me, Ben allowed us workers to take the junior lessons that the junior members would get. And it probably took me about 6 to 8 months before it just consumed me. Yeah. And so when the other guys working there, actually working in the bag room and the club repair and doing things like that, went back to college, he asked me if I wanted to work there. And that's all it took. It was wonderful. Ben later went down to Carmel, California as a teaching pro, and a gentleman by the name of Duke Matthews, who was one of the leading players and played the tour, became the pro there. I worked for him for 10 years. And then Billy Tyndall, who became the dean of the Northwest Golf Pros, former USGA junior champion, became the pro there. And I went back to work for Duke when he moved to Southern California. So I was exposed to everything pretty early. It came to me early what I wanted to do. Right. In fact, I remember Duke asking me when I was probably 17 if I had any idea what I wanted to do with my life. And I said, well, all sincerity, I said, when you retire, I want to be back here and take your job. And that didn't work out, right, because I discovered warmer weather was south of Seattle. And I love Seattle. Right. If I was a tennis pro or something and could work inside, I would probably still be there. But I needed to go for warmer weather. Once I found out warmer weather was possible. Right. And I relocated to Palm Springs, and after that, it's always been warm. Palm Springs, Tucson, Sacramento, Houston, Fort Worth, the Panhandle up by, the Panhandle well, and up there, and now down in Tampa. So I've just enjoyed it. I've had great mentors along the way. When I was in Palm Springs, I left O'Donnell Golf Club, the original course in the desert, where I was one of the only assistants they've ever had, and went to work for Gay Brewer and opened Desert Horizons Country Club in 1980. And Gay won the Masters in 67. Many people don't know he lost in a playoff in 66. Nicklaus won it. Right. And I was included in everything. So I met all the greats of the game, and it just fueled my passion even farther. And I've had some wonderful experiences due to where I was and the mentors I've had.
It's interesting because everybody has a story, obviously not quite as fortunate as yours, but, everybody has their earliest memories of how they got introduced to this game. And, usually it was as either a parent or in your case, it was both parents. And, for whatever reason, whether it was to get you out and get you working or whether it was just to introduce you to the game. And it's always interesting when I hear people's stories and they talk about how, for a period of time they went out there and, hit balls or what have you. And then all of a sudden they were just, they were hooked, and that was it. And it sounds like that was a similar passion for you, and where there came a point in time when the game was just, this is what I want to do. And you went on, as I mentioned in the bio, you went on to play on the mini tours for a number of seasons all over the country and even up into Canada a little bit. And then ultimately you've come over to the other side of the game. And that's something you don't see very often. You don't, usually see somebody will be a player or they'll be a coach or a teacher of some sort, but you've done both. And that, at what point when you were playing did you say, I think I'd like to teach this game as well?
Well, I was always working as a golf professional
right
at private clubs. But if you're in the desert, which I was, the summertime is not generally very busy down there.
Right.
So I could take 12 weeks off and go play. And I still wanted to play. I got invited to a lot of great tournaments, played with a lot of great players. And I tell everybody it's because every tournament has a last place finisher. And I offered the tournament a quality last place finisher. Right. I would play with the amateurs and give them the distances and, laugh at their jokes and hang out with them. And every person trying to play the mini tours, because a lot of them were pro-ams.
Sure.
You'd have one group one day and another group the next day, another group the next day. And they hated following me because they said, we got to read all the putts. We got to give them all the distances. But keep in mind, I was doing it because I love golf. I still love competing, but every year I got worse. Right. And the guys playing got better every year. Right. And rather than taking a cruise or something, I just pooled my money together and played 12 to 15 tournaments a year, driving, probably 40 to 50,000 miles during that time period, back and forth across the country between tournaments. And I loved it. And if I could still do it, I would. It got to where it was a physical impossibility. Sure. And also, my best year, I lost $1,500. That was my best year. So, you look at that and you wonder how many more years can you do that? And yeah, it became a point where I could play 2 days in a row because my back was so bad. And so I play in a couple little local things, but other than that, I very rarely play anymore. But I love golf, and I got into the teaching side of it quite a bit. And then I got into the golf course construction, design, the agronomy side of it, taking care of golf courses, being the superintendent, being the general manager, being like a one-stop management company. And I really enjoyed that. So it's a lot of work, and I'm sure there'll be some people listening that are going, oh, I hear you. And I'm right there with you. It's an extreme challenge, but it is so much fun. Just like you're teaching somebody and they slice it all the time and suddenly they start hitting it straight. They're so thrilled. But some of these golf courses are the same way. And if the board of directors and the members will allow you to do what you think is right, and you can help that course turn around, it's just so rewarding. And I've been incredibly fortunate with the memberships, with the board of directors, because you can't do it all on your own. And you need the staff, you need the buy-in from the members. And I've been very, very fortunate that that's happened. And that continues to happen here in Dunedin.
Well said. Do you think, given your, not just your abilities and, being a player and obviously as a teacher professional, but being involved in other aspects of the game, do you think that that's given you, I guess maybe a greater appreciation for the guys that design the golf course, like a Donald Ross and all that, to just really kind of get a bird's eye view and think, okay, now I understand why they do what they do. And because most people that just go out on a golf course, they look at the beautiful aesthetics of it. And, but you had it sort of from a different bird's eye view than sort of the average amateur out there. Do you think that it's given you a greater appreciation of the game, being able to see it from your side of it?
There's absolutely no doubt it has. I mean, as a player or a club member or anything, we all have our favorite golf courses
Sure.
that appeal to us for some reason. Growing up in Seattle, I like kind of trees on golf courses.
Yep.
And the desert was a lot different than that.
Mm-hmm.
But there was an architect that did a lot of golf courses on the West Coast, a lot of golf courses in the desert. His name was Ted Robinson. And I used to tell Ted or talk to Ted, and I'd say, I don't understand it. I can drive through so many places in Northern California, and I can just see land that is a golf course.
Yeah.
You know, you just build greens and it's a golf course. Mm. Same with Texas. Oh, my goodness. You can drive through East Texas or the Piney Woods, and you can just visualize the hill country. You just see a golf course, a vacant piece of land. You just see it. I said, how do you do it in the desert? I said, I don't see a single golf course down here because it's just flat sand and palm trees. And right. He goes, well, you just push it into whatever shape you want. And I said, Ted, that's the problem. I can't visualize it. I don't know how you guys visualize a flat piece of land and say, we're going to cut a lake in here. We're going to have a green here. We're going to have these bunkers. I said, when the land gives it to you, I see it. When the land doesn't give it to you, I don't see it. And you got to figure the golden age, the Rosses and the Mackenzies and the Tillinghast and all those people, that was what the land gave them, pretty much. Nowadays, we have all the earth moving equipment and we can work with computers and everything. So we've gotten some lesser quality pieces of land to work with, but they've still made fantastic golf courses. And architects are just incredible. Yeah. They sit there, you've got to figure out drainage. You don't want your course wet all the time. You got to figure out the sunlight. I mean, nobody wants to be playing into the setting sun the last 3 holes in a row and can't even see the green. Right. You know, how you lay out the driving range. You want a left to right wind 90% of the time on your driving range. Your golf pro better be fantastic at giving lessons. I mean, I think the whole thing is fascinating. And I've been lucky. I built my first putting green at 23 years old. Wow. I was at O'Donnell Golf Club in Palm Springs. We had a little tiny practice green. Couldn't have been more than 25 feet by 20 feet. Very small green. And the chairman of the board of Johns Manville Corporate, former chairman of the board of Johns Manville, kind of watched over the greens crew, and he was a friend of Robert Trent Jones. So Mr. Jones came out, and this gentleman said, we need to rebuild our putting green. And Duke Matthews, my boss, said, well, Blair's really interested in architecture. And he said, come on, Blair, I'm going to show you how to build a green, and you're going to build it. So this little tiny putting green. And of course, I've got ideas of hills. The green's only 20 feet long. Right. You can't have too many hills and valleys in a putting green like that. And so he tamed me down and explained to me that we kind of just need to have as many putts as possible, the little break, because we can't have something that takes too much of the green out of play. But he actually taught me how to do it, showed me how to do it. Later on, you know, Ted Robinson helped me. Architect by the name of Ray Hardy helped me. Current architect by the name of Jeff Bloom that does a lot of work helps me. And then Chris Spence that restored this golf course, which is fascinating to hang out with. These guys really know their stuff. And I've got holes in play. I've got greens in play that I've designed, driving ranges, chipping greens and everything. But I tell you, after talking with these folks, I'm not an architect. Right. I may be an aficionado, I may be an amateur, but these people really know it. And what they look at and what they see is, to your point, fascinating.
Yeah. It's interesting, you know, when it can be the simplest golf course to something that's literally like a masterpiece. And it just is amazing how they have that foresight and that vision. It just blows me away. And I'm like you. I mean, I've played a number of different types of courses. I've been, tree line courses, and then I've been to where it's, desert, and it just amazes me that the difference. And you look at it and you just think to yourself, how do they it's easier if it's tree lined because you can carve it out a little bit. And obviously you have to factor in, I mean, some courses, especially up, and I'm sure in the Northeast or Northwest rather, you have more rock to deal with in some areas. I know up in British Columbia, and that as example, and even parts of up in Canada and Northern Ontario is the same way. They've tried to do that. And, it's just massive rocks have to be moved and things like that. It's just amazed how they do that. But I want to fast forward now to the future, or to the current time. And now you're at Dunedin Golf Club in Florida, and you had an opportunity to come here and help with that restoration and obviously be a part of their facility. So tell first off a little bit of the history for those that are not familiar with it. Obviously it was built back in 1926. Donald Ross, of course, was the original architect. And then you said somebody else now, you mentioned a moment ago, has come with the updates and things like that. So talk a little bit about the history, how you came involved in it, and what's changed since from when you first came.
Well, obviously,
I know that's a lot to unpack, but
this will be interesting to some folks, or I hope it is, because it's interesting to me, and it's part of the reason I'm here. First, the chance to take such a historic golf course like this one and be the project director for the restoration, and have Chris Spence as an architect, who's just phenomenal when it comes to that golden age. And his muse, the person that I'm convinced speaks to him to this day, is Donald Ross. So
yeah.
For everybody that isn't that familiar with Dunedin Golf Club, 1924, the city of Dunedin was trying to become a player in the tourism market, and they found a site for a golf course downtown. It was going to be a municipal golf course, and Donald Ross was going to design it. And by 1926, nothing had really happened with it. And a developer from Detroit came down, and he promised 36 holes of golf, a casino, a 300-room hotel, a housing development. It was a great plan.
Right.
And Donald Ross was going to design this golf course. And since the work on the public course hadn't started yet, they've got work started on this. And I wrote down something fascinating. I gotta be able to read it now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Work started, and I gotta find where I wrote it down. Here we go. So work started, and 296 days later, the course was opened January 1, 1927.
Wow.
It took 226 men, 68 horses and mules, 13 scrapers, 5 trucks, 16 wagons and carts, graders and rollers to get that 296 days to build a golf course from ground, wild ground. And that's because this developer was pushing this product. And we opened January 1, 1927, and held the Florida Open February 21st and 22nd, 1927. They played at Pelican Golf Club. Pelican Golf Club is back to being Pelican Golf Club. It's very private. It's 20 minutes from us. It's where the LPGA plays today. Mm-hmm. So you played 18 there in the morning. You played 18 at Dunedin in the afternoon. And then you played 36 the next day at Clearwater Country Club. And Bobby Cruikshank finished second in that first Open, and Tommy Armour finished down the list. But Armour said it was one of the finest courses he'd ever played. The layout's the thing. It's the best in Florida, if not the entire country.
Wow.
And by 1928, Sarazen was playing here daily and called it the best course on Florida's West Coast, could be the best in the entire South. And that's just after opening up. And that's the genius of Ross. I mean, there's a lot of Ross golf courses.
Yep.
You've got a Ross golf course, original Ross golf course up in the Panhandle in Panama City. You've got a lot of Ross golf courses in the Northeast. I didn't have any in Washington or Oregon. There's one in California, Peninsula Golf Club. There were originally 3 in Texas. I think one truly remains. That's Sunset Grove in Orange, Texas. So it's mainly a East Coast, just because of the travel, getting around back then. So you've got quite a few of them in this area. And as I found out about this job and started researching it, I mean, just we have this history that's incredible. We were known when the developer kind of went under during the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
Another group took the course over, and in 1938, they made a deal with the city to take over operations of the golf course, assuming the city could meet some provisions, which the city did over the length of time. So this has truly been a city-owned facility since 1938.
Wow.
But the cities never operated. They always had an operating agreement with the entity to operate the club. And it was Dunedin Golf Club. But in 1945, it became the PGA of America. So from 1945 to 1962, this was PGA National Golf Club. And we hosted 18 PGA Seniors Championships, the longest running senior major that's still on the Champions Tour to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody played golf here. Bobby Jones, Hogan, Nelson, Babe Zaharias, all the stars of the entertainment world, but all the male and female stars played golf here. The other thing that happened was this was the site of the first teaching summit in the PGA. Teaching summit goes on today. This was the site of the first business school in the PGA. Business school, PGA Business School goes on today. This was the site of the first merchandise show of the PGA. It started in our parking lot in 1954. So that's a far cry from the PGA merchandise show today in Orlando, 3 days and 45,000 people over those 3 days.
Right.
They all started here. And I became enamored with some of that as I looked into it. I came down to visit the golf course, and it was tired. The PGA had flattened a lot of the greens out. The PGA had removed a lot of bunkers. Donald Ross opened this course with wide fairways, maybe 116 bunkers, and the PGA had planted, or PGA or well-meaning people through the years had planted palm trees, pine trees.
Right.
It had become a forested golf course with 40-some bunkers and flat greens. But you could tell the original greens were there. And the city announced plans to not only restore the golf course, and we use that word carefully because renovate implies that we ripped it up and made it something new. We did not.
No.
We restored it to Donald Ross, and Chris Spence, who's done 22 Ross restorations, was the architect. And it's a tribute not to me, not to Chris Spence, not to anybody but Donald Ross. We think this is the course that Ross would be proud of. We certainly hope he would be. TDI Golf was the golf course construction firm. They've done about 30 Donald Ross restorations. They work in Canada and down here in the United States. And their shaper was just an incredible shaper. He's the architect on the bulldozer. And so Chris really tasked him with finding the original greens. So it was like an archaeological dig. So all the greens, the PGA had moved one of the greens. We moved it back to its original fill pad. All the greens are on their original fill pad. We didn't bulldoze a green down, bring in new dirt, reshape the green and its surround and the bunkers, and then build the green. It's right where it's always been. But when Chris cored down, he found the original green 2.5, 3 feet beneath the surface of the modern green. Because Donald Ross grew his greens in cinders, And in the coring, you could see a black layer of cinders.
Hmm.
So the bulldozer would push 2 feet of the sand, the overburden, they called it, off the green. And then the shaper would get on there and he would do an archaeological dig with the bulldozer, pushing it out to all of its corners, revealing the black layer, find all the slopes, all the hills. And Chris had photographs and he had the original field notes from Ross. And Ross, this was not a project that Ross drew up and didn't visit. He was actually visited here, made field notes, made corrections, and we had all those. So Chris and the shaper would get together and he'd say, "Did you find that spine? Oh, you got the spine. Okay. How about the thumbprint over here? You got the back pin placement, the run? Yep, you got that." And he'd finally stamp it and say, "Okay, this green is ready."
Mm-hmm.
And they would survey it, basically. They'd survey it from 16 points around the green. They would just core the green out. Once they cored it out, they'd do drainage, bring in new greens mix, and recreate what 2-3 days before they'd just done.
Wow.
And then sprig it. So they're on their original fill pads. These are as close to the original greens in the original location as you can get. The only difference is green speeds are a little faster today.
Yeah.
So they're tempered in some of their slopes just slightly to allow the course to be played. The bunkers are authentic Ross bunkers. They're fairly flat in the bottom with fairly steep sides. A lot of them have grass faces coming down. They don't have that flashed face look where you see sand. The work that Chris Spence did around the greens complexes is nothing short of phenomenal. And every architecture aficionado, guru, other architect we've had out here has just gone, this is amazing. They're really special.
You know, I just sitting there as I'm listening to you and I'm thinking to myself, I mean, this is a Herculean task. I mean, to say the least, and that's probably selling it short. I mean, to be able to go in there and do that and not only locate, but then recreate what was there, it is really nothing short of brilliant. I mean, I couldn't even begin, to imagine and just, hearing you explain the process and how detailed they were and to what lengths they had to do just to get down to find it and get where it was. And then they had to go through the process of imagining it, if you will. And I wonder what has been, I mean, well, first off, how long of a process has this been? I mean, obviously, it didn't happen overnight. I mean, you said originally the golf course was about 200 I think you said 26 days from start to finish before they opened it. What was the length of time that was involved in getting it to where it is now from where it was?
Well, it was 296 in the beginning for Donald Ross.
Yeah.
We actually started work. Our groundbreaking was March 1, and TDI Golf was on site working that day. We were on schedule to reopen somewhere between the 1st and the 15th of November. So that's 8 months. That would, if my math's right, and that would have beat Ross. Of course, we had, and we put in a new irrigation system.
Right.
We did some drainage work. We built some new tee boxes, grassed the whole facility. But we had a couple little fun things along the way.
I'm sure.
Right as we were getting really close, we were about, I'd say, halfway through grow in. Tropical storm Debbie went past us.
Mm-hmm.
That was brutal for rainfall, and it turned into Hurricane Debbie as it was passing us. We survived that. We did everything, whatever little amount of washouts there were and everything we fixed. And shortly thereafter, we got 2 hurricanes back to back.
Yeah.
And Helene had an unbelievable storm surge. everything was coming in when Helene hit. And I don't want to make fun of this because it ruined lives for people and ruined homes.
Yeah, of
and
course.
For people that have never been down here, we are right across the street from the water. There's a lot of homes across the street, but that's actually the bay dredged out. The developer dredged out the bay to make more home sites on the water. And there are places where the water comes up right to the other side of the street that runs by the edge of the property. And Helene only dumped about 1 3/4 inches of rain. Had some wind, knocked a few small trees down, but the storm surge was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it put 5 of our greens underwater. It put probably 3-4 of the fairways were pretty submerged. We got that pretty much dried out, and here comes Milton.
Yeah.
And Milton, that was not my favorite hurricane.
Mm.
The tide was going away, the surge was going away from the shore, so it did not flood nearly as much. But it dumped 15.21 inches of rain, and the wind was greater, and it knocked down 96 trees on our golf course. And this was probably 5 weeks away from opening. So we were pretty well there. And some of these trees were 20 feet around. They were not twigs.
Right.
The twigs stayed upright because they flowed with the wind, but these were some gigantic trees, 96 of them. And then FEMA gets involved, and you have to meet all their rules and regulations because the city obviously would like reimbursement. So we have to do everything necessary. And so we actually got open December 27th, which I think, given the circumstances, was really good.
Oh, yeah.
But we were on schedule. We would have been open the same November 1st to 15th as we opened December 27th. And that was due to Chris Spence dedicating a lot of his time to flying out here and approving greens and approving bunkers, and also TDI Golf.
Yeah.
They stayed on top of it. We had weekly meetings, myself and the construction superintendent and our green superintendent at the time. We were meeting daily. Bring up anything we think needed to be changed, a change order, anything we thought they were falling behind on, or anything that they were way ahead of and doing great. And then everybody involved with the construction, from their home office people to us, to the engineering firm, which was Stantec, to the person planting the new trees that needed to be planted, to the irrigation supplier, which was KDC Irrigation. We all met, and we had great communication, and that was the one thing that helped. It really helped us push that timeline as fast as possible, and really helped us with the hurricane cleanup, because every one of us had to do a lot of stuff.
No, I imagine,
with that hurricane, and we were responsible for a lot. And we were talking at 11 o'clock at night. We were talking at 5:30 in the morning. Hey, I need to do this. Can you not do your stuff there today? And that's literally how it went. And we all pulled together. We got it done. I think we got a great result out of it. And all those companies that did work for us, it's a testament to them also, that we were able to recover the quality of the workmanship that went in, that we were able to recover so fast from something that was a pretty big disaster in this area. Definitely hurt a lot of people's homes, ruined some lives, but we were able to recover, and thank goodness we were.
It's amazing when you think about it, because you didn't have just one, but you had really 2 hurricanes that came through in a very short period of time. So, as you're trying to prepare to get, over the first one, here now you've got another one coming in that's, obviously different and different circumstances, but essentially coming through, the state And as you said, it was just devastating. And then ultimately went up into some of the other states here in the South. But yeah, that is amazing to be able to do that. And again, kudos to all of the individuals and obviously all the companies that were involved in doing that, because that's not an easy task. I mean, when you're doing the quick math here, you're basically a little over a month past your deadline, and you managed to get open despite having all of that come through. That's amazing. And that just goes to show you the dedication and the passion behind it. And you guys have had obviously some great positive feedback, and you were awarded by Golf Inc. As Renovation of the Year. Talk a little bit about that, and then just maybe a little bit the impact that municipal courses, the major impact that they have in their communities, and how important it is, especially for an area like Dunedin.
Well, I think both of those are extremely good points. The city was doing everything they had to look out for all their residents, and there was considerable damage throughout the city. But the city was so supportive of this, of this restoration, and they cleared as many hurdles as they possibly could when we needed to get all this work done.
Yeah.
So I could go to the companies and say, we're good to go. This is okay.
Yeah.
You could please get this done. And the result of getting open and then getting some feedback, we had qualifying for the Florida State Junior here, because we've got a long history of U.S. Open qualifyings, just due to the quality of the golf course, even though at times it was a little, it was very tired. But that's not the case now. We're going to hold the Florida, or we think we're going to hold, because I signed the contract today,
right,
the Florida, the FSGA Publinks next year. We'd like to get back to holding some bigger tournaments.
Sure.
We're holding a lot of local charity tournaments and business corporate outings now.
Yep.
But we'd like to get back to holding something bigger like we used to, but you have to walk first before you can run. We think that that's our real value to the city of Dunedin.
Right.
For the people that have not been to Dunedin, and I'll sound like I work for the Chamber of Commerce or the Tourism Bureau here. Dunedin it's a fascinating city. It's 37,000 people. We're northwest of Tampa. We're north of Clearwater.
Mm-hmm.
We are a town on the water. I don't really call us a beach town downtown. In other words, you don't see surfboards and
right,
things like that. We do have one of the top beaches in Honeymoon Beach, which the Causeway is right at the end of the golf course. It's just pure white sand out there. It's amazing. We're a great fishing destination, but downtown Dunedin is 3-4 blocks long. It is so quaint. You won't see chain stores. You'll see lots of boutiques, lots of little restaurants. I believe we're the home of the first brew pub in Florida. We're the spring training home of the Toronto Blue Jays. And when they leave town, we have the Class A team, the Dunedin Blue Jays. Believe it or not, our pipe band, which people might say, what's a pipe band? It's like a marching band for Scots. And yes, it's one of the top ranked in the country, because we have one of the largest Highland games in the country. We have one of the oldest Mardi Gras in the country. And we're this little town, 37,000 people. We don't have another golf course, but now the city has Dunedin Golf Club, and it's becoming a destination for people to come and play. And our competitors are some of the finest courses in this area. So if you're coming to this area and you want to play the finest golf courses, you're probably talking about Streamsong. You're talking about Cabot. You're talking about Innisbrook, which is right up the road, play where the tour plays. If you're lucky enough to get on Pelican or Bel Air, they're 20 minutes south of us. Very private, but wonderful golf courses. and then you've got the TPC in Tampa.
Yeah.
And we are getting play from all those golf courses, either when their people come in and play us that day and then go to that golf course, or play there, come down on the day they're flying out and play our golf course. So we're getting great response from all over the country. I think we've had close to 50 articles written about us in everything from national publication, Forbes, golf.com. You mentioned getting the best restoration public golf course from Golf Incorporated, which is wonderful. But we've been on a lot of regional publications, and a lot of our regional is because of the Blue Jays is Canadian. Yeah. A lot of the visitors are the Northeast, Upper Midwest, Michigan, Central Midwest, Chicago, Illinois, Indiana, something like that. But we get an awful lot from New York, Boston, Connecticut, these areas where there's a lot of Ross golf courses. So being a public Donald Ross golf course that's restored in this area means a lot to them.
For sure.
And I'm not saying they're beating down the doors, but in season, it's a good thing to have a tee time here because there's not many openings.
Well, if you're getting them coming and going into the area, that says a lot about the restoration and how successful it was. And just on a side note, you guys must be doing something good down there, because the Blue Jays have been doing pretty well the last few seasons. And being Canadian myself, if you hadn't picked that up yet, Blue Jays, of course, are my team. So keep up the good work. Get them out there on the golf course. Get them playing in that, and let them have some fun. And tell them we want to see them bring home the World Series here before too long. But it's interesting because I think it's the one thing about this industry is, as challenging as the game is, and difficult, and being on both sides of the fence, being a player and then also being a coach, how challenging this game can be. But the one thing that always seems to sort of bring us all down the middle is the camaraderie that people have out in the golf course. I mean, you can put four strangers together that have never met and can find commonality out in the golf course, no matter what level of play they are. There's always something that they can talk about. There's a willingness to help one another out there, your fellow golfer, if you will, to help them, especially if you've played that course. And it's always interesting. It just amazes me, this industry, how we can sort of come together as a common denominator, if you will. And golf just brings everybody from the most successful business people in the world to, your average weekend warrior that wants to go out there, to some of your juniors out there. And golf just manages to bring people together in so many different ways. And, spoke a few moments ago, about tragedy with the hurricanes. It wasn't that long ago we all went through the pandemic, and golf was really a shining star because there wasn't really a lot for people to do. And golf was one of the fortunate ones that was able to, and brought a whole new group of people that never played this game before out to the golf course. So, it's just amazing what has changed over the last few years, and you at Dunedin have to be very proud of the restoration and obviously the sort of resurgence, if you will, of a classic golf course in Florida, and obviously here in the United States.
There's no doubt. I just tell people golf's the greatest game of all time. You can play it by yourself. You can play it with three other people and have a foursome. We have a handicapping system, so somebody really good can play with somebody that struggles a little bit. But while they're doing it, they're making friends, they're talking, they're telling about restaurants they've been to or funny stories, golf courses they played. They're talking about their hometowns, the camaraderie. You go to a little 9-hole golf course out in the country and you go, well, it was fun. How many members do you have? Oh, we got 300 members. Really? It's the camaraderie. Exactly. It's the camaraderie that has them there. It's amazing. And one thing the city of Dunedin is known for is having really great water. So I think that's it's the water that's letting the Toronto Blue Jays play so
yeah,
well.
that's what I said. It must be something down there.
I think that's it. But we get a lot of retired sports people here, and certainly the Blue Jays are our favorites. Both the big league club when they're in town, and the clubs that they're playing, and also the Dunedin Blue Jays. We're very proud of the city, and we're really proud of Dunedin Golf Club. And we've got things left to do, but we're going to do them.
Well, it sounds like you guys are well on your way to, getting, making the Dunedin Golf Club back on the map. I mean, it's been there, but I think since this restoration, I think a lot of people are going to be pleasantly surprised at the changes that have been made, and are going to be able to appreciate, the legacy that really Donald Ross has made, the vision, and obviously with Chris Spence has put his mark on it now by honoring Mr. Ross with this restoration. So obviously he's, I'm sure, having a lot of pride as well, being able to be a part of this, and as you as well, from making that 20-foot green that you had the opportunity so many years back, to being involved in a major project like this, and through some difficult times. No matter what challenges we're faced with, we always manage to come through on the other side, and that's going to give you a certain amount of satisfaction, a lot of pride as well, and particularly for the city of Dunedin and its 37,000 plus residents. But if people want to go and get more information, or if they want to consider coming down your way, particularly the Dunedin Golf Club, what's the website, if you have it there by any chance?
www.dunedingolf.com.
Perfect, and they get all the information.
You'll get us, and we're featured on our website. You can book on our website. We've got obviously a phone to the club, a phone to the golf shop, but we are a municipal facility. Mm-hmm. We are open. We have tee times every day, open to the general public, and we'd love to have them. We'd love to have people come down and experience this, and experience some of the great restaurants and bars in Dunedin, and check out our little city, which we're very proud of, and play our golf course. And we'll help try and make recommendations for other golf courses in the area for them. But this is a special place, and we're going to continue to make it more special.
Well, I think you guys are well on your way to accomplishing that, and I think a lot of people will enjoy coming down and not just playing the golf course, but experiencing the city of Dunedin in itself. But I want to thank you very much for coming on. It's been interesting. I got a little bit of a history lesson on one side, but also got an insight into your world and what it's like to be able to see a restoration like this, because not everybody has that opportunity or that chance. So thank you for sharing that with me, and particularly thank you for sharing with my audience. But you're welcome to come back anytime, and I'm going to make my way down to Dunedin. I have never been there, but I'm going to definitely come down now for sure and get on that golf course, and I'm looking forward to it. But Blair, I want to thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Well, thank you so much for having me. You're obviously welcome down here anytime. So I'll make you a deal. I'll go back on your show after you've played this.
Oh, yeah. You're welcome.
You come down here.
I will.
And then we can go on. We can talk about it. You can talk about, how you hit the fade off of number 4 and knocked it right in the middle of the fairway.
Before we go, real quick, what's your favorite hole on the course?
My favorite hole, personally, I think number 6. 6 is what we call the Shark's Mouth, 150-yard par 3. Got a big bunker in front of the green. It's authentic. It's it looks just like when Ross did it. That's the one most of the visitors know. They call it the Shark's Mouth, and that's what they know it as. But it's a fun hole. You think you should birdie it every time, but par's a pretty good score there.
Yeah.
Just you go a little long or left or right, and you don't have much of a shot. So play number 6, take your par, birdie number 7.
Yeah, 150 yards sounds like a pretty easy shot for most people, but you'd be surprised at how the teeth of the shark can dig right in. But again, Blair, thank you very much. All right, I want to thank all of my guests tonight. Special thanks to my earlier friend and guest, Pete Buchanan, for joining me on the Coach's Corner panel. Thanks, Pete, as always for doing a great job. And of course, Blair Kline, the general manager of golf operations for Dunedin Golf Club. Thank you again, Blair. And don't forget, if you want to watch this episode, you can go onto the YouTube channel, the iGolf Sports YouTube channel. It'll be up there shortly, and you can check it out in its entirety, as well as all of the previously aired shows as well for both this and also the Women of Golf that airs every Tuesday with my good friend, LPGA professional Cindy Miller. But on that note, have a great weekend, everybody. God bless, and we'll see you next time right here on Golf Talk Live.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. We'd like to thank this week's Coach's Corner panel, and a special thank you to tonight's guest. Remember to join Ted every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central on Golf Talk Live. And be sure to follow Ted on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're interested in being a guest on Golf Talk Live, send Ted an email at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.